Here we go.
Carrie, you're live.
I'm gonna go to you.
Nope, don't go to me. He's the host. He's the host.
Say good morning.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to.
Oh,
And hold
Ben,
on.
there he is. There's the man of the hour. Come on in, Ben. We just went live. And did you bring your friend with you?
No, he bailed last minute.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, we got
Okay,
three of us anyways. So welcome, folks. Welcome to Prophecy Montana Podcast Sabbath School. We are on, what lesson are we on? Let me pull it up here. We are on lesson number 9, Living Wisely. And for those of you who are watching live, we're a week ahead. And for those of you watching this later on, it's probably more timely. And we do it for that reason. So it's, oh boy, I'm going to have trouble with words today. Anyways, we got Ricky with us and we got Ben Doctor is back with us. And, so we're all going to be just going through this lesson today. And it's a really good lesson, actually. It's about morality, isn't it? This week's lesson is about living a pure life. And
Living a godly life, right? Living as Christ would live.
yeah, and specifically it talks a lot about abstaining from sexual immorality and how sexual immorality can actually be a sin against the body itself. But before we begin, let's start with a word of prayer before we open up God's word. Heavenly Father, we just pray that you'll join us this morning as we open your word, that you'll prepare our minds for truth, and that what we say and what we do here, that we ourselves will be hidden, and that your character and your light will shine forth. In your name I pray, amen. All right, so yeah, just hope everybody that's watching can receive a blessing from this lesson this week, because it's a really good lesson. The memory text is Ephesians 5:15 through 17. You want to read that for me, Ben?
Look carefully, then, how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is.
Okay, and then let's go to Ephesians. Actually, let's read 1 through 20, because chiefly this entire lesson is about Ephesians, chapter 5. And so I'll go ahead and start that. Therefore, be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not even be named among you, as is fitting for saints, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving thanks. For this you know that no fornicator, unclean person, nor covetousness man, who is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore do not be partakers with them. Now, let's stop there for a minute, because it's interesting that, it's addressing this sexual immorality. Now, you would think that inside the church there would be less divorce incidences than outside of the church. But statistically, we're told that it's identical, that people get divorced as often inside the church as they do outside of the church. What do you guys think some of that? I mean, how is that this way? When you would think that at least there would be some percentage.
I would think that the church, there's too much world in the church. I mean, if we were honestly going with the Bible, with the way God would have it, we would actually take those vows that were spoken seriously, and we would, through the hard times and the good times, through all times, we would strive to make it work, and we would center Christ in the middle of it.
Now, there are a lot of problems that come up, but I think a big one is I think a lot of people get married before they should.
Yeah.
We're told in the last days there'll be was it marrying and giving in marriage, and that's kind of our culture too. Oh, I'm in love, gonna get married. That's kind of what we do, and some people get married too young, but that's not always the case. There are times where there's good marriages and then things just flip. You wouldn't have known. But yeah, like you said, taking those marriage vows seriously and really letting God lead you to the right person.
Yeah, he's our answer. I mean, he's the
Yeah.
one that we have to keep centered on
Mm-hmm.
if it's going to work. If we take him out of the equation, it's going to fail. I mean, it's just bound to fail.
I knew this guy. He's been a friend since high school. His grandparents were so in love. I mean, they were just like, amazingly in love, all up until the day they died. Now, you would think they would have a long courtship or this long time of acquaintance prior to marriage.
I believe in that way, though. I mean, I never did it personally, but I wish I would have. I wish I could have, and I know it's hard in the world today, but I believe the way God set it up.
You talking about a long courtship?
Yeah, well, with a courtship, so you get to know one another, and know if you could actually stand the person or not, instead of, it's one thing looking at a person and saying, oh, wow, they're beautiful, gorgeous, but living with them is a different thing,
Check it out. These people courted for less than one day and were married by evening.
A Las Vegas marriage.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, that would be the typical Las Vegas marriage that you see. But in all actuality, these people, they just knew that they were right for each other and they were compatible, and then they married. They were equally yoked.
How would they even know that?
Well, maybe that's kind of the what this lesson is getting at, being wise. Because I think two people who are immature and don't have wisdom, don't have that understanding, could get together and, if they get married right away, it's going to be a mess. But I think the more prepared you are beforehand for the marriage, the more you'll know,
You'll know one another,
Yeah.
and you'll learn how to be able to cope with, habits that may get on your nerves, but, you work through those habits. Instead of the world today, I know in the world, it's you have sex, and then you kind of court. You know what I mean? Well, it goes, you have sex right away, and that's what it's determined. Oh, I'm in love, we're in love, and it don't work. I mean, I think God meant it for the courting, for you two to get to know each other, take the time, find out the good and the bad, and learn to work with it, and true love, you'll learn to work with it. Then I believe in saving the sex until the wedding. And I mean, just the way the Lord, because that's that special, I don't know, that's the way he meant it to be,
And I think I have a friend who's been dating this girl for quite a while, and I think they're quite compatible. But they've been, having sex pretty early on, pretty regularly, and they don't they don't live together, but they spend
a lot of
time together at each other's, places and stuff like that. And I asked him, I was like, do you intend on marrying this girl? And he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And I just thought to myself, well, I mean, then like,
In God's eyes, you're already married.
well,
you know that.
you're getting what you want, and that makes it hard for you to make that commitment. And it's like, I think they would marry and they would be good together, but I think because they're having sex, it's like
Why
they're just
do it?
like satisfied. They're like, why get married? Why
Complicate things?
why complicate things?
Why buy the cow when you get the milk for free?
Yeah, why close that way out, right? Mm-hmm. When we're getting everything we want right now. I think that's very worldly, and I think there's like
Very
more to
worldly,
it.
yes.
It's like there's a blessing in marriage when it's done right.
Mm-hmm.
When our minds are right about it. I think people can start off that way. I've heard of many people who started off that way, and then God has shown them, this is how I designed things to go, and like they've stopped having sex until they got married.
Amen.
Right?
Yes.
And it's like their marriage is fantastic.
Yeah.
God can God can like raise stuff up from the ashes. He really can.
Oh yeah.
But you know, when we're in that worldly mindset, it's like we're like not receiving God's blessing.
Of course not. We're
Yeah.
not at all. And there is a blessing doing it God's way with everything. I mean, just like, for instance, that Jubilee, or when they weren't supposed to grow anything on their land and stuff like that, they actually never ever did it. They never listened to it. But I believe God would have blessed them greatly if they would have trusted God. And
I just seen a YouTube short, and I don't know if this was legit or if it was kind of a joke, but I thought it was pretty cool. So there's this guy, and he's telling this story. He had 2 lemon trees, 2 that he planted, and they started growing. And one tree, he decided that he was just gonna, as soon as it started producing lemons, he was gonna start harvesting the lemons. Well, the other tree, he decided he was gonna do it according to what they were told in the Old Testament. Give it 3 years, and then on the third or the fourth year, whatever year it was, to take the first fruits and give it to God. Well, after the third year, beginning of the fourth year, he took the first lemon and he wrote first fruits on it and he put it in the offering basket at church. Now that's kind of silly, but he's like, well, after we did that, this is what happened. And he's like, this is a lemon from the first tree, and it's just like a normal sized lemon. The second lemon, he's like, this is the lemon from the tree that I gave the first fruits to God, and it's just this monster lemon.
Wait a minute.
I believe it, man.
He's like-
Someone sent me something on that. Someone sent me that same. What it was on YouTube Shorts or
Yeah.
something. Someone sent that, or I watched it, or I ran across it myself. Yeah, and this great big lemon.
I was like,
It's
I don't know if
gigantic.
this is just like kind of like a joke, but it's really amazing in what I think that the guy's trying to get across.
Well, and God would do that.
Yeah,
I
he
have
would.
no doubt about it. And especially if we take it in faith
Yeah.
and just do it, then it'd be like God would be saying, oh, look what Carrie did. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I'll give him big lemons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So my brother says, and I didn't know this about my brother on the chat here. He says, 3 days after I met my wife, I asked her to marry me. We have been together north of 25 years. I know he's been with her forever, but yeah. So there you go, 3 days.
Yeah, I think when God has prepared you and you're ready, you're ready.
Well, what about in the Bible when they
Do the mic?
You gonna turn your mic on? I got it set up for you right there. Yeah, so other people can hear you.
so what about in the Bible where Isaac's wife was picked out? Remember?
Yeah.
Oh, picked out. Yeah, picked
there's a
out
lot
for
of
her.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
there was a lot of that. What about in India? There's no divorce,
Mm-mm.
and they're actually given.
Oh yeah, it's very
Into a
disgraceful to
little-
get divorced in India.
Yeah, I mean, there's no divorce, and then there was a family that was. Oh, in the South too, they picked the wives out for the man.
Hmm.
That still goes on.
What do you guys think about that? What do you guys
is
think
crazy.
about that?
I never really thought about that because, yeah, Rachel, that's a different story. But Rebecca, she didn't know Isaac. Yeah, and
All right. So I was watching, probably right after a couple of videos after I saw that one that Ben was talking about. But this lady that used to come on the 3ABN channel all the time, and she would talk about health. I want to say her name is Rosie, but I'm probably wrong about that. She's got salt and pepper, kind of gray hair. She's real thin. She's a doctor, and she used to talk about like the benefits of vegetarianism and stuff like this. Well, she came on there and said something very interesting. She said that sperm to a woman is considered a foreign body to a woman,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And a woman's body will actually normally attack something like that, right?
Yep. And
But-
kill it. Yeah.
Yeah, but the sperm contains an immune suppressant in it, an immune suppressant. So when it goes into a woman's body, it actually suppresses her immune system so it doesn't attack and kill the sperm. So, and that's how a woman can actually become pregnant, because otherwise her immune system would immediately just kill it, right? All right, so what does that have to do with anything? So the woman's body also has memory. So that when how do I say these things delicately? I'm going to start blushing. But
We wouldn't be able to tell. So
yeah, because I'm red anyways. Is that what you're trying to say? So when so whenever the man is with the woman, her body is now not totally, this immune suppressant's not totally shutting down her immunity altogether, just enough to where it doesn't kill the sperm. But what does that mean for like a woman who's promiscuous or let's say like homosexual sex? These immune suppressants in a homosexual relationship
It will attack.
Actually shut down the immune system of the partner, and which is one of the big reasons why so many homosexual males are dying of diseases. And for like promiscuous sex, when a woman has multiple partners, remember there's that memory mechanism in her body.
Yeah, I remember.
But it doesn't remember these other male partners.
Yeah, just the one.
And so her immune system is being suppressed all the time. And so she's more susceptible to disease and stuff like that as well. So there's some real scientific like reasons, like backing as to why,
Well, we were designed a certain way.
Yes.
Yeah, we were designed a certain way. Exactly right. So I got through that. I didn't think that was going to be so hard to talk about.
I just think the schools are teaching.
Well, this is an
It's
adult
so
Sabbath
sad.
school here. But for young kids, this is something for young kids to be taught as well, I think. And we're not taught these things. Is your friend that you were talking about, is he Adventist?
He grew up Adventist, but he hasn't gone to church since high school.
Yeah, okay. See, I wasn't taught sex ed in the church. I was taught sex ed in school. And I don't even remember what sex ed was like in school.
Boy Scouts.
It was pretty, I think it was just basic biology. But nowadays they go a lot further into it, and
Who knows what they do these days?
but
Could be pretty
it's
scary.
well, they give them books, and the books are pornographic, and they're teaching them how to perform sexual acts with same-sex
it's
partners and stuff
bull
like
crap.
that. And why would a kid have to be taught that? I mean,
Yeah.
I got a little bit of training in Boy Scouts, if you want to call it that, when I was growing up, about sex and stuff, but that wasn't from like the Scoutmaster or nothing. It was from like, from nudie books and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But basically the point is you really don't need to tell a kid much about sex at all.
No, because they already have I remember I was just little, like 5 years old, and I was being babysat by this one lady and or this one girl, and there was a bunch of us, and I remember liking this other little girl. We were playing house, like immediately and stuff. And I had feelings for it. I was just a little kid. So yeah.
Yeah, it's something that's kind of just it's in our DNA. I mean, I think I don't know. I don't want to say too much more
Yeah,
about that.
right.
But okay,
Let's go
so
with the lesson.
well, this is kind of the lesson. It's about sexual immorality, and so why is there so much sexual immorality for one in the church? And the separation between because knowledge is power. If we don't know these things about growing up, then if we're not taught these things by our parents, if we're not taught them by our church, we're certainly going to be taught these, sex through our peers
To the world,
and
yeah.
by the world and everything else. And the next thing you know, we just have a worldly view of these things. And so having extramarital affairs, having premarital sex, and all these other things become very normal and become very natural for all of us.
Yeah.
And we don't see them as sin. We see them as just a normal thing. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons why the church is struggling with, because you break God's plan. You stray from God's original
Yeah.
plan, and the next thing you know, you're just like the world.
And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned, breaking God's plan, walking outside of God's plan, and I think there's something that's foundational to be able to even walk according to God's plan. So, we're told that wisdom begins with the knowledge of God. Is that a verse in Proverbs, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, our wisdom begins when we start that relationship with God, and He starts
The
teaching
fear
us.
of the
right?
Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, something like
okay.
exactly, something like that. And I think that a huge problem in our church, it might not be the biggest, I know it's just something I've seen, is that I don't know if a lot of people in our church that experience these issues and are, kind of enraptured in this, in the worldly way of living, I don't know if they really understand the character of God, if they really know who He is and what He's done and what He will do, like the lengths that to which He will go
To save
for
us.
you.
Yes.
Not just to save our souls, right? To save for our like actual salvation, but the lengths to which He will go to free you from addiction, the lengths to which He will go to free you from a relational dysfunction. Like He died for you. Like He went all the way. Like He's going to go as far as it takes
For you to make it.
For you to make it.
Yep.
And I think that there's so many, like Adventism really holds a really strong culture. Like it's been around a long time, and Adventists are very focused on the Word and on scriptural fact and all that stuff. Like it's a real strong personality of a church, right? The church has a real strong personality, and that generates a real strong culture. And I think often people stay and people leave because the culture is so strong. Like often that's a turnoff for people. Often people need that kind of like stability. And so that becomes the reason for a lot of people why they're staying or going. And I like that is the wrong reason to stay and the wrong reason to go.
Yeah.
It really comes down to Christ.
It comes down to Christ and the relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And like you were talking about before, they don't really know Him because they haven't really. They may know all the truth, but if you don't know Christ, it don't mean nothing.
Yeah.
You have to know
and
Christ.
that's the point of what Ben is saying. I mean, a lot of people, and you've experienced the culture. When you came into the church, I kind of was raised in it, so I guess the culture became part of me. But when you came into the church, I mean, you felt awkward, you felt kind of...
I felt awkward at first,
How long
I
did it
hadn't
take?
Been in a church since I was a little kid. And,
Wait, now, were you kind of raised Adventist, or were you kind of...
no, I was... it's a story. Didn't really ever go to church. I found churches when I was a little kid. I came from an alcoholic, family who didn't really care. I had two families, but then when I moved with my dad and my stepmom, every once in a while we'd go to a Assembly of God church, and the pastor there his name was Brother Baker, and anyway, I remember Gloria always saying, well, why do we meet on Sunday? When Saturday's the true Sabbath, and Brother Baker, he'd get all red, start sweating. He didn't ever know how to answer that question. So she always knew the truth. Then it was some time after that we were in Nebraska, and my dad worked at the railroad and at nights, and he came home one day and he says, I found someone who goes to church on Saturday. Gloria, as my stepmom, was like, no way. Then it was like, then he came over. Then there was a seminar actually going on, and we went to the seminar. And I knew Gloria knew her Bible pretty good and stuff. And we only went to one of the meetings, but when we were coming home, I remember going, these people know the truth. And I guess that's how.
Jonathan Sorto, I hope I said that name right, says good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Jonathan. So, I guess I kind of remembered that when you were giving your testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, there is definitely a culture, and I guess some people can get culture shocked when they come into the Adventist church, and hopefully the culture doesn't push people out, but I think it often does.
Check this out, though. I was on fire for the Lord when I came in.
Mm-hmm.
No
So
one
it
in
doesn't-
the,
it
no
didn't
one
matter.
no one in the church was.
Okay.
No one in the church. It's just like me being the only one on fire. Then I remember this one person saying, "Oh, it'll cool down sooner. You'll."
They're telling you that.
Yeah.
Wow. What a thing to tell somebody. Well, it's kind of
And
like
that's the experience I've really found in the church, to
It-
tell you the truth, Gary.
it's kind of like when we were talking to Andy Weaver. I mean, the Amish are really excellent with their kids, with their child rearing, and and I don't know what I would imagine their percentage of people staying married in the Amish is pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And maybe that's because of part of their culture as
Oh,
well.
Sure. Being shunned and all the other stuff.
Yeah, there's that. There's the pressure to stay married in their societal construct, and I don't think that exists in the church. There's no pressure because we don't want to judge people.
Mm-hmm.
We
We
don't-
want to be too much like the world, and that's plain and simple.
Well, yeah, and we,
We
want
don't want to
conform.
be separate.
We don't want
I mean, to me, when I first came in, though, I mean, you wouldn't have things that are going on now. I mean, there would be no LGBTQ at your universities or anything like that, which are, been going on now. None of that stuff would have.
unfortunately.
Then I remember with the vaccine when I first came in, people always had their children homeschooled because they were against getting all the vaccinations for school and all the other stuff. They were totally different when I first started than they are now, believe it or not.
I can attest to that. How about you, Ben? Were you raised in the church?
Yeah, I was raised in an Adventist church. So what are you asking about that? Like whether things have changed from when I
Yeah,
was
if
young?
you've noticed any change since when you were young, or I mean,
How old are
did
you,
that
Ben?
affect-
I'm 27.
He's 27? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a young-looking 27. I knew he was a little older.
I'd have to think about that. Nothing comes to mind immediately. I mean, I don't know. I guess in my own experience, like, my family was quite loose as far as kind of like the rules I was given as a kid. Like, I think the extent of my, the extent of the, like, what I was not to do as a kid was I wasn't supposed to watch TV or play video games on the Sabbath. Period. Anything outside of that,
It was all game.
it was all game.
Free game.
And we respected sundown and whatnot, and we definitely we prayed every night as a family until I was probably went off to high school, and then that kind of dissolved. But we ate every meal together. That's a big
awesome.
thing.
Huge.
That's big.
That's really big. And then my mom, of course, prayed a lot for me and my sister.
Amen. And the praying a lot as a family, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
But other than that, like growing up, I could play video games and like I could watch movies. I mean, my parents were kind of picky. There was if it had like, a lot of sexual content, I wasn't allowed to watch it. But like, I could watch like the TV edits of like Terminator and Lethal Weapon and stuff. Just because they cut all the language and nudity out. Like, they were pretty loose on kind of the rules, which I really appreciate, honestly. It gave me, just for me personally, like I'd imagine there's some kids that like stricter rules really benefit them. For myself, like the freedom to choose was really important, and I think it played a big role in me coming back to Christ in my late teens.
Oh, interesting.
I-
He said something there, though. The freedom to choose. Because as parents, we're getting off the lesson a little bit here, but I feel like this is important. But as parents, I mean, how far do we go with the strictness? Because
you want to lead them in
Yeah.
the way of God, the way that He wants. But then I've seen a lot of Adventists will
they go too far.
Yeah, like the older ones were saying that they couldn't go into the water past their knees on the Sabbath. They couldn't go swimming because it was considered work.
Yeah.
But there has to be a fine line where you make something pleasurable. Like I remember someone talked about when Sabbath began, they knew it was special. There was a special dinner, then they got the sparkly drink and all the other stuff. It was it was something to look forward to instead of, oh, crud, we can't do this, we
the
can't do
Sabbath,
that, we can't, yeah. The parents of them tried to make it so they looked forward to it. It was like, their favorite everything, instead of making it torture. I mean, just like the Jews, how they made it where they even put little napkins on their pendant because they weren't allowed to wipe their nose on the Sabbath. I mean, you can overrule something, make it so it's a burden instead of a delight. And that's where we need to find the fine line, the in between, not going too far left or too far right.
And I think this is where the wisdom comes into play, because I'd imagine, I'm not a parent, nor am I married, but some people, they'll get married, they'll have kids, and they'll have never have thought of something like that. Like that, like, how do we address the Sabbath? That, like, could very easily blindside someone who wasn't prepared for it.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think necessarily that that's an issue. What I think the solution is this idea of wisdom and where we receive our wisdom, right? Because I think the Spirit will lead us if we stay connected with Christ.
Yep.
Like there's been times where I've been blindsided by a problem, and I'm just stressing about it. And then I wake up 4 a.m. sweating because I'm still stressed about it. And I'm like, you know what? Why is it taking me so long to come to Christ with this? And I come to Christ. I give it to him and completely relinquish my hand in the matter. Peace comes, and as soon as peace comes, the solution comes right after that. And it's like, that's how God works. He really wants us to relinquish our problems to him.
Yes.
And he gives us that wisdom. And it's a gift. It's not just like he's
personal.
Yeah.
He's very personal. He's the closest person to us.
Mm-hmm. The result of him giving you that too is like, now it's yours. That wisdom that was attained, like now is building you up to be a wiser individual. And when a similar problem arises, you might not have to go to God with it because he's already given you the tools beforehand to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I think you should go to God anyway.
Well, yeah.
No, but what he's saying is like it's instinctual.
It's not as hard. It's not as hard.
Yeah.
Because you trust
like you
it.
immediately
You're
know the
building your
answer. You
faith.
don't have to struggle over it at that point.
Yeah, if it's a similar problem, new problems, there'll always be new problems, and we're always going to be stressing over something.
And it's because I went through the same thing that you're kind of talking about. I believe I was stressing about a situation. I have a person staying with me, and they took my car to the park, and it was like, then I got a call that my car broke down, and it's in the park, and this person's leaving tomorrow, and I'm thinking, oh, great. What am I going to do? I'm like, starting to stress about it. It's like, I don't know really anyone. I called Carrie. It's like, hey, you want to go to the park Sunday or whatever? Go trying to figure out how to get my car back or whatever. And I'm stressing. I'm like, Lord, it's yours. Whatever happens, happens. I know it's going to be all right. And lo and behold, it was an alternator, so
fairly easy fix.
Yeah, fairly easy fix. Unfortunately for the guy staying with me, he spent like $500 getting the car going so he could use the car. Then it was like another $500. I don't know, but anyway, God works things out. He does, and a lot of times we stress over nothing that we shouldn't stress. We should be like how you said, and because it worked for me to give it to the Lord, then boom, the stress goes away, and he takes care of it.
And that's not our natural instinct.
No.
It's something that it's learned.
Yeah.
It really is. And
it's the negative. I noticed the negative wants to come out of me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of giving it to God, it's like, oh, complain or gripe about the person or whatever, or whatever.
Yep.
And give it to God, and boom, everything was taken care of.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's read That sound like some of the teachers now.
Yeah, finally, though.
Whoa, alrighty then. So, how far did we get on 5:1 through 20? We're on Ephesians 5:1 through 20 here. So, I'll just reread something, I guess. We're in verse 8. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of the light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord, and have no fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. That's like Walter White's favorite verse right there.
Yep.
And
Well, I think you should. We should. It just says it right there.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
should.
and
And
so,
even if it's in the church, whatever it is.
well, let's stop right there and talk about that, because, okay, so that particular verse right there, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. Does that mean that, like, for example, someone's doing something wrong and you expose them? Is that what it's talking about?
I don't
It's-
think so.
I think it's. I think when you see, how would you say, something that's not right, yeah, you're supposed to expose it. I mean, say for instance, if Ben was shooting up some drugs right there, I'd have to say, hey, Ben, man, that's not good for you, brother. There's a better way. You know what I mean?
You just can't picture Ben doing
No,
that.
me neither.
But if Ben were walking down that road, you'd be able to identify it right away, because you've been this down
Oh,
the
yeah,
same road.
definitely.
And you'd be like, hey, come on, brother, let's have a talk.
Yeah.
You know, this is
Yeah.
And so maybe that's what it's talking about. Maybe it's talking about calling sin by its rightful name.
Yes, yeah, I
You know?
like that one.
But
yeah.
now let's say a homosexual came in and wanted to join us this Sabbath on church. Do we pounce on him and tell him what a
No,
sinner he
of
is,
course
and,
not.
and try to expose his sins? I mean, how do we take this in context?
We would do it the same way that I just would have did with Ben. You know what I mean? It's wrong.
Well, I think it'd be
you
a
know.
little different with a homosexual, because he's already chose that lifestyle. He's walking in.
Yeah, but
and
he
then-
chose to.
Well,
I
yeah.
shouldn't
So
say that for
comes
Ben. I'm
that
sorry,
comes
Ben.
down to like when a homosexual, open homosexual, is, you know, they're open about it. They've already decided that there's nothing wrong with it, and so if you present to them it is wrong, you're immediately at odds with that person. You know, they're immediately going to get into a defensive position when you come at them like that. I really think, you know, it's kind of like if you're to uproot a weed, right? Well, let's take it a scriptural route. You know, the parable of the landowner. He had a bunch of, wheat growing or something,
And
but
the
an enemy
tares.
sowed tares into his, and he's like, don't pull it up.
Let them grow
until-
together.
Yeah, let it grow together until the harvest, and then we'll separate it then. And I think what's really important is planting good seeds into that person, because Christ, he's the reaper, right? Or his, you know, we're not. We sow and we water. But when that fruition of the Spirit comes about in that person's life, the Spirit's going to be like all this good stuff that has been sown in you. That's good, but there's these things here that need to go. And if Christ is at the seat of that person's heart, that person will let those things go. And it's not that they're going to necessarily be straight all of a sudden.
No,
They're
of
just
course
going to
not.
abandon the ways of darkness and the actions.
They're going to start their walk of sanctification,
Yeah.
which every
Yeah.
single one of us has to do.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it be a homosexual, a drug addict, you know, or whatever it is, we all have that walk that we're going through, and we're going through if we choose the sanctification. And
I think it's fair to say, as men, because I was talking to Framo about this yesterday, and I think about 100% of men struggle with sexual immorality. You know, I don't think any one of us are left out of that playbook.
not even.
You know, because we're visual, because of all of the things that are available to us nowadays. You know, I struggled with pornography for years, and I've overcome it, and, you know, through Christ. And so that struggle was very real for me. Is that sin any worse than the sin of homosexuality?
No, absolutely not.
And it's not. And so, like, to me, if someone came in off the street laden with sins, that person just needs to see Jesus for who Jesus is. And then that transformational power of Jesus in their life can make those changes without anybody ever telling them that their life is wrong.
And the thing of it is that person, the Lord is with them no matter what. His grace covers them. That's what the grace is for. It's to cover you through your walk to sanctification.
Well, and that's it. But now if after being sanctified, you as a brother see me falling in sin, now that's an occasion to come to me and call me out on it, I think.
Yeah, there's a difference between new people coming into the church, people who aren't part of the heavenly church, not necessarily the
earthly church.
The earthly church, but just part of Christ's kingdom. There's a difference between those people who aren't there yet and people in the church, people we have relationships with, people that we've prayed with. I think that we can be more upfront with them because they already know our hearts. They already know that God has put a heart in us for them, for each other.
And then you love them, and you
exactly,
and you care about them, and they know that you're not a threat, and it's
Yep.
Yeah, I've always said that if unless you're a good friend with somebody, you really have no real business dealing with their, calling them out on anything really.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be friends with somebody before and that might risk offending that person, but as a friend, you can offend a friend and they'll get over it.
So how do you go about calling sin then?
Well, between me and another person, the way
like a pastor or whatever, like in our church, we can definitely call sin right on the pulpit, right?
So I think number one, being just relationally, being vulnerable to the other person first, exposing your weaknesses, we'll just say to take it kind of in a primitive animalistic kind of way, exposing your neck to that person in a sense, exposing your vitals, saying
to give it up to them.
Yeah, before bringing your concern to them, really humble yourself and recognize your problems, recognize where God has brought you, and that He isn't done with you as a person yet. So I think it's very important to come to that person saying, hey,
empathy.
Yeah, being hey,
empathy.
this is what I struggle with. And sometimes being telling them something that maybe you haven't told someone else can go a long way. Be I'm actually I'm really struggling with this right now. And I just want to tell you that, hey, I'm not judging you. And I don't want you to feel that way in this relationship. And I just want you to know that I'm there for you in this area of your life. Maybe not even bringing it up, but bringing up a similar area of your life
that they can relate to,
so that they can almost open up to you.
Yes.
There's something really transformative about being opening up, letting them opening up to you versus me being hey, so I seen you have a problem here.
I seen you drinking a Dr. Pepper there.
Oh no, Dr. Pepper. High fructose corn syrup. You know what Ellen White says about high fructose corn syrup?
Yeah. That's good stuff. All right. So, anyways, no, I'm just kidding. So, for it is shameful even to. Okay, we're in verse 12 here. We just read verse 11. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret. But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light, for whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore he says, awake, ye who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. Okay, walk in wisdom.
Awake.
Yeah, awake. So there's this notion, and it even says, calls us into, from being dead to now coming back, to coming into life. And so when we were dead in our sins, as it were, and then Christ came and then revived us and resurrected us, and now we walk in newness of life. This is the rebirth that is spoken of, because anybody who is born of a father on earth is doomed to die, right? That's our lineage. That's our lot in life. And we are genetically predisposed to death, right? Through the process of sin. We've inherited it from our Father. So how can we get out
So
of
if
this?
we are living in sin, we're dead. We are dead.
We
We're
are
plain
dead.
and simple.
And everybody, because we have the sinful nature, we're naturally drawn to it. We naturally want it. We naturally like it. It feels good, at least at first. But then being then promised to another, our Father in heaven, and through this blood transfusion process, thank you, Lisa. It was okay for a little while, but now it's getting kind of distracting. But now Christ becomes our Father. He grafts us in to something that we weren't a part of
A new
before.
person, born again.
Born
We're
again.
a totally different person. And we may
And
fall.
that means a
but
death to the old self.
Yeah.
Now, if we
Yeah.
were sexually immoral, now Christ is going to walk us, and the walking part is important. It's not like for some, maybe it can be a transformative thing where one day they're doing it, one day they're not. I know when I quit,
But I think the Lord still, I don't know.
but more often,
He's not looking. I don't
Well,
know.
here's a from the story from the Bible that kind of helps me visualize this. I think it might be in Luke. So Jesus is up and he's in front of the synagogue, and he's maybe not the synagogue, but anyway, he's up in front of some people I believe it's on the Sabbath, and he's reading out of the Word. It's one of the only times I think we're told that he's like actually there.
Where it says
He's like up in front of like church, right? And he's reading out of the Word, and this woman comes in, and she's like crippled, and she's like hunched over. She comes in, and Jesus is like, calls her out, and he's like, "You're healed." She didn't come to him. She wasn't asking for anything. He reached out to her and is like, "You're healed." And then he touches her. He goes to her and he touches her, and he effectively straightens her up. And what I've always took from that particular story is that we can be healed. We can be given the gift of freedom from sin. We can be given the gift of, all spiritual blessings, whatever it is. We're given all things through Christ, right? But a lot of the time, we don't know how to walk that way. We don't know how to walk or act like we've been given everything.
Well, because we've lived the other.
Exactly.
We've known the other.
Yeah.
That's what happened with me in my walk when I first came to the Lord. All of my friends were still in the bar. It was like all these people in church were old people. You know what I mean? It was like
not like you can hang out with
after
them.
a while, I started missing people, and it was like, so I went back to the bars. Started with old duels, talking about the Lord, but it didn't last long before it was back to double rum and cokes and bud. So.
Yeah, well, that's how it happens.
Because I was used to it. I wasn't used to this life.
The habits and the rhythms of our life are really ingrained.
Yeah.
I think our bodies really like a schedule. They really like repetition. It's easy for our bodies that our bodies don't have to, deal with, some, like, let's just take our diet, right? You eat a constant diet, same thing regularly. The gut biome starts to adapt to that and starts to really thrive there. But then you throw in something just like way different in there. The body's like, whoa, now I have to deal with this. It's
not used to it.
Yeah, the body's always searching for efficiency. And I think our minds are like that too, because like there's habits, right? Habits are there for a reason. And often we fall into bad habits, but good habits are super important to have, right? It makes things really easy.
We need to substitute our bad with the good habits.
Mm-hmm.
Find a good habit to replace the bad habit.
And that's part of, I think, like that, the sanctification, being changed, is that it's not just like our hearts, because it starts in our hearts.
Oh, yeah.
And then it works its way outward.
Yeah.
And soon the Christian starts to walk that righteous lifestyle. But That's why, and this
But
might
it's
be...
out of love. The
Yeah,
first
exactly.
is out of love.
Exactly.
We want to be like Christ.
Yeah, but there's
Lord, I love you. You know what I mean?
There's a very real psychological component to this,
Mm-hmm.
and Christ works through that psychological component as well. Of these old habits.
No,
Die
he's
hard
the only one that
type.
can work because we can't do it. Like you were saying, everything in us wants to sin. There's nothing good in us. He's the only one that can live in us to create something good.
Well, here's something, just kind of an idea that I'm bringing up. So there's people out there who are really into certain things. Like, for instance, let's take with the whole like pornography and masturbation and sexual sin and stuff like that. There's a huge group of people who are really into like abstaining from that stuff, right? Like really, really avoiding it. But it's not because the love of Jesus is in their hearts. They're doing it because of the perceived physical effects, right? Higher energy levels, clearer thinking.
Wow, I had no idea.
No, I've seen some of this. Yeah, they're talking about it a lot online.
Yeah, it's a pretty big movement, and
Yep.
like I think that's good. I think that doing things for
Maybe
your physical
it's
being
Christ's
is great.
way of helping them, and they
Well,
don't even know it.
I guess the point I'm trying to bring up is that like if it's not of faith, like is it like
Is it valid?
is it valid? Like I guess what I'm asking is like
Does it
is
still
there-
have benefit?
is there a
Of course it does.
can we do something for like the right thing for the wrong reason?
Yes.
And that right thing still be considered sin because of the wrong reason, because of our hearts,
Oh,
right?
oh.
Like we're told if it's not of faith, it's of sin. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a very broad blanket statement,
Yeah.
like broad statement. Like, can I help somebody on the side of the road and it purely be for selfish reasons? Is that sin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
According to if it's not of faith, it's of sin.
And that goes along with what Solomon was saying. It's all vanity. So I mean,
Vanity.
if we're just doing this to increase our energy, to increase our
well,
vitality
the Lord lets us.
of our
Well,
whatever.
the Lord would let us have it because the ones like the Pharisees, they like being seen by the people. They like the high seats in the meeting places and stuff like that. And the Lord says, well, they have their reward. So
Yeah.
what they got, their glory from men was their reward. That
Yeah.
was their reward.
Yeah, and
So your people are not masturbating and doing all that
Yeah.
for energy. That's their reward, I suppose. I
Yeah.
guess.
Well,
it's-
they're okay. Anytime you follow God's law, like let's take the Asians for example. They they honor their mothers and their fathers, right? They honor their elders, and the rest of that commandment is so that your days will be long upon the earth. They enjoy long life, on average. I know things are changing there
Yeah.
now, but these commandments, they have rewards.
No, definitely.
Thou shalt not kill. When you live in a neighborhood where people respect life and they're not angry and hateful and violent, it's a nice neighborhood to live in. When there's no stealing, when there's no lying, when there's relationship, when you're honest with one another, you reap the benefits of that honesty.
yeah.
And
that's part of the evidence too. That's part of evidence for Christ, is that there are these benefits, right? Even outside of a relationship with God, following living according to His commands has its reward, and I think it just points to God, and I think it's something we as Christians see and can use as evidence ultimately.
And appreciate because He loves us. It is all about love. And He wants the best for us, and this is how we get it.
Yep. Yeah. Don't
Wow.
touch the stove.
Right?
It's hot.
It's hot. It's
Yeah,
a
you'll get
bird.
burnt. Anyways, so we're in verse 15 here. Walk in. No, did we already read verse 15? Let's read it again. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. Now, let's stop right there. I know that there are people out there that feel as though it's okay to drink. I'm talking Christians.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
say Jesus, he made wine.
He made wine.
He drank
wine. This and that.
Uh,
And that the Bible does say that he made and drank wine, but and it doesn't really specify in the Greek whether or not that wine was fermented.
Yeah.
But
We're also told not to drink too much, right? I remember reading that somewhere.
drink to excess.
Yeah. There was some verse that said, like, I think it was in Paul's writings, Timothy maybe, or Philippians maybe. He says, just like, don't overdo it. Don't overdo the drinking. And I was like, that's implying that like people are drinking alcohol, But yeah, continue where you were going.
Yeah, but even have you drank too much of standard grape juice before?
Oh, you can.
I mean, I actually one 8-ounce glass is too much for me, and it kind of makes me queasy.
Yeah, it's a sugar rush is what you're getting. Yeah.
Yeah.
the way I look at it for that argument, though, is, okay, we see alcoholism and all the problems, all the families that have destroyed, how many lives that has taken.
Yeah.
Would Jesus really promote that?
Oh, I don't think he would.
No.
I mean, when he was here on the earth, there was a lot of drinking and debauchery and stuff. Like, he spent time with those kinds of people.
Well, he did.
But he wasn't out there like
But
saying, "Yo, like, let's get together and bust open a keg." You know,
let's
It's
have a
like,
kegger later
no.
on.
no. I mean, that wasn't his goal. That was never the focus or his point. And I don't think that he looked down on people because of it too, because
He loves us. He loves
Yeah.
us. He never looked down because he loves us.
yeah.
He always, with pity, with sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He did confront people on their sins,
Yeah.
but it was out of love, out of caring, like you were saying,
Yeah.
how with a friend or something like that. That's how. It wasn't condemning, it was painful to him.
Exactly. And that just like Christ is on our side. Like
Yes.
that's the thing I think a lot of people who are anti-Christian for one reason or another, they perceive that Christ isn't on our side.
Like he's judging, oh, you bad,
Yeah.
you're a bad sinner or whatever.
There's this sticker and it has Jesus and it's like you stick it like along a wall or something and it's Jesus like poking his head around the corner and it says I saw that. And
not even.
I think that's it's hilarious because like as a Christian understanding that that's not who Jesus is, I think that is a funny sticker. But that isn't who Jesus is.
No, it's not.
And
That's
it's not
at all.
And it's just reinforcing a false image of God.
Yeah, that's what Satan loves.
Yeah.
That's what he's always tried to do.
And what I see with a sticker like that is that there are a lot of people who think that Christianity is just judgment,
Yeah.
And fair enough. Like there have been a lot of like individuals and churches and stuff who have made it sound like Christianity is just judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, when that woman was about to be stoned for adultery, he stood up for her.
Yeah.
He stood on her side and he's like,
That was the sinners that wanted to stone her
exactly.
to death.
He's like,
The only one that didn't sin.
yeah, he's like, is there anybody here condemning you? Right? And she's like, no. Like even Jesus didn't condemn her. He's like, all right, now that you're not condemned, now that you're safe, now that I've done my work in your life, move forward without sinning.
Yep. Sin no more.
Exactly.
Sin no more. Yeah.
And that's the key. I think the key to us being able to walk away from sin is understanding that we are not condemned by sin because of Christ.
Yep. His grace is awesome. It's
Yes.
wonderful.
Wow. Thanks, Ben, for joining us today. That time
Is it
flew
over
by.
with?
I know. I know.
Where did we get?
It's just,
Well, I came like a few minutes late. We can go a few minutes late, right?
Well, no, we I as you guys probably noticed, I never really follow it by day. I just take the
Theme.
spirit of the lesson,
Yeah.
the theme of the lesson, and just kind of hash it out. Because if you study the lesson, I think what's nice for me, if I'm watching something, I just want something in addition to the lesson.
Yeah.
Something to complement it.
We don't need to go over it.
Yeah,
You've already read it.
Yeah, you've already read it. So, I mean, but to discuss the fine, all the little details and stuff like that, and but we're thinking about having some programs maybe on a Friday night or something. I mean, you guys tell us, would that work better for you guys as far as time wise? Because I know 9 o'clock is really early for some people. Because we're in Mountain Time here. Some people on the West Coast, that would be really early for them. That'd be
So,
like,
so you're planning on doing this on Fridays, the Sabbath
no,
school?
not the Sabbath school, but our prophecy updates and stuff like that.
Oh,
Framo's
okay.
talking about maybe doing, maybe a series. I know he's actually talking
Interesting.
about maybe coming on the podcast,
Yeah,
and
that'd be great.
he's excited. He was talking to Randy the other day, and they've got some.
Has Framo ever been on the podcast?
He never has, yeah.
Because he's been mentioned a number of times for
Yes,
sure.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be like a celebrity appearance.
It would be. Ramo's such a great guy. Great big Samoan guy with a great big heart, and everybody loves
Yes,
Framo. Everybody knows
definitely.
Framo in this whole area, and even I meet so many non-Adventist people that know Framo.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
Yeah,
he's
and
a
they all
presence.
know him, too.
Everywhere he goes, he's a presence,
Uh,
and not just because he's just big in stature, but he's also got just this big heart. But yeah, thanks Ben for joining us, and we got a
Thanks.
prophecy
It was
update.
awesome.
Don't go nowhere.
Okay.
But and thanks for watching, guys. God bless each and every one of you guys. If you guys have any prayer requests, you guys can send them to prophecymontana@gmail.com or in the comment section as well. And please keep us in your prayers. And I'm being given the signal that we got to